Welcome folks to In the Back of the Ute. It's been a fair few weeks since we were last sat here, and this is Russell Young with Young Seeds, and normally he's in the tractor driving and I'm filming, and he's either planting or harvesting, or there's multi-species and he's crimping, he's doing something. And so I thought, brilliant, we can actually have a proper full-on conversation and learn about why you're doing what you're doing, how it all came about, your business and all those sorts of things. So welcome to the Back of the Ute.
Okay, thank you.
He has just rescued me. I've run my battery down and out the second time. So yeah, and then we had to travel through all this water. So if I'm a little bit all over the place, that's why. First of all, Russell, when I met you, you had a really good bumper crop of multi-species.
Yep.
And then, yes, you were crimping it. Why were you having a go at that? What happened? Where did you start?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess to take our family history back to like 60 or 70 years ago, I mean, the two sides of our family, I had one grandfather who was a dairy farmer on the coast who was very much about looking after the soil, green manure crops, using his pig effluent from his piggery on his cultivation, all that sort of stuff. So he was on that side of the fence, and the other grandfather was exactly the opposite. He farmed out here. It was obviously not so much about chemicals back then, but certainly fertilisers and definitely no stubble retention, so burning everything, burning all his wheat stubble, sorghum stubble. And I don't criticise him for that, because back then they didn't have the equipment to handle the stubble like we've got today. So they really were limited in the way that they could do it. But so I guess growing up, I could see those two polar aparts, you know. And I guess one I could see as something that was probably sustainable, one that seemingly just got you into that situation where it was more fertiliser. The system just rolled on. You know, you had to keep pouring inputs in that when they first started out here they didn't have to do. So I guess that's behind the scenes. That's where that's, you know, probably it was always in the back of my mind what's going on there. And so then, yeah, I guess probably ever since I did a soil food web course in Lismore, I became a lot more aware of exactly what's kind of going on in our soil and what we're definitely getting wrong. Not to say that we're necessarily ever going to get it right, but so I was always concerned about what we're doing, and are we still gradually heading down that declining path? Is there a better way of doing it so we can actually start to turn it around? Even though we've not burnt our stubble for a long time, we've incorporated legumes, we've done all that sort of stuff to try and obviously keep our place reasonable. But I guess I left Lismore thinking that there was definitely things we could do better. So, and then of course that was, I've forgotten, I think it was 2017 we did that, I think. So came back, but we were starting to be in the middle of that drought, which was really 17, 18, 19, and even into 20 wasn't great for us. So, you know, we played around compost teas and all that sort of stuff. And I guess last year we had enough moisture to go in and plant a winter crop where I kind of knew we could at least achieve something out of it. So yes, I wanted to do multi-species prior to that, but really that was the first opportunity that looked like we could actually get a sensible outcome and actually see what it could do. So yeah, we took that decision last year to start with the multi-species.
So did you contact Dr. Christine Jones before, or during, or after?
After we'd planted, yeah, after we'd planted. Yeah.
For what reason?
Well, actually my sister contacted her initially, and I guess just trying to understand, you know, what things we should have in mixes and that sort of stuff. Just, you know, because I mean, we didn't have a clue. It was just a stab in the dark. We threw 12 different things in a bag and chucked it in the seeder and hoped it came out the other end all right, which it did. I mean, it worked well, but I'm sure we could have done that whole mix a lot better. We could have had better things in there probably than what we did, but certainly not disappointed in the outcome that we got from that mix. So yeah, and then obviously Christine came here in, I think it was the 22nd of July last year. She came to the property, and that's when I actually first met you.
Yeah.
And then the next day was in Toowoomba at Highfields for that conference there. And yeah, so it was great to obviously catch up with her and learn a lot more about what she was on about. But yeah, so it was just about, that mix was only about soil improvement. There was no cash crop involved with that. It was wholly and solely just doing something to try and obviously build diversity, you know, improve the biology in the soil, And there's no doubt throughout that crop, I noticed things that I hadn't noticed in a monoculture crop, the way the soil behaved, the way the water use was, all of those things that by no means had we fixed the problem, but I could see little things that were telling me that we probably need to start to look at what we're doing and start to try and move that idea of a multi-species into our cropping program. We're certainly not there yet, and we probably will be a little way off. But
so did Christine help you along those lines with the whole cash crop, or did you just?
And that was just ideas from, yeah. No, she said, you know, that's what we probably need to aim for. And I mean, the problem in Australia is our weather is so variable that when you have got a season where you can grow a crop, you kind of need to make something out of that, as against doing what we did to just simply have a complete soil health crop. Had we have had a cash crop in there, that would have been a better outcome, no doubt. But anyway, you start and you make mistakes, and hopefully you learn from that. So the second crop then was a summer crop, which we did have a cash crop in, along with multi-species still. So there was some of the winter crop that was planted last May, still growing, probably mainly plantain and chicory were the two things that were pretty obviously there, which didn't show up that well in the actual winter multi-species crop. They seemed to come through later in the season. So we had them there. We didn't spray anything out, put no chemicals, no fertilisers on, went straight back in with a summer mix of sugar drip. There was some brassicas in there, a linseed, fenugreek. I threw some flowers in there and some vegetable seeds, just on Christine's suggestion. Why not do it? I mean, it's just adding diversity. So we did that and harvested that in, I don't know, 2 months ago, I suppose, June. We harvested that.
So that went underwater though twice, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult season. So when you first came out and filmed that, it was dry, and we were planting dry, which is something I've never done before. And we only did that because the Weather Bureau were forecasting 50 mils of rain within the next day or two. Yeah. So we planted dry. We got 15 mils out of that, and that didn't work terribly well because it wet that top couple inches, but it didn't stay wet enough for long enough. So we germinated some of those seeds. Some of them would have died because they just simply ran out of moisture before the next rain event came through. So then we went back in and planted, after we got quite a bit of rain in October, we went back in and planted again into that same paddock in a different layout. So we planted our winter layout first, when you were here the first time, and then we went back in the middle of those two rows with our summer layout. So 20 rows of winter, 10 rows of summer, and that was better, but it was at the start of what became a pretty big wet rain event period. So on the 3rd of December, we actually had flood water all over those paddocks. So everything was only small. The sugar drip was only a couple inches high. Nothing was ideal, but we certainly got a reasonable amount of the sugar drip through, but a lot of the other things that we'd planted drowned out because it was just too wet. So the Condamine River was here for about 24 hours on those paddocks. And on top of the leading rain events, the rain events that led up to the flood, obviously, those paddocks were soaked for weeks. So it was, look, it wasn't ideal, but surprisingly, at the end of that period, we still harvested off the sugar drip. We got 7 tonne off the multi-species area, and in the equivalent area of monoculture, we harvested 10 tonnes. So, I'm not too disappointed with that, because it wasn't that the multi-species was what held it back as such. I think it was that we just didn't get the establishment of plants there that was the reason why it didn't yield, as well as the other paddocks that were a little further west on the place didn't get flood water on them, didn't have as much water lying on them for as long as this area did. And that's simply because it's extremely flat on this end of our property, at 250 mils of fall in a kilometre. And I know we're not great at the other end, but at least we're at 330 mils in a kilometre. So it does just drain out a little bit quicker the further west we go on the property. So yeah, there's a few things happening there, but definitely as far as that multi-species cash crop in that particular situation, I wasn't disappointed with it, that's for sure, yeah.
And what led you down this track? I mean, you said about the soil food web, what was that, back in 2017, but why? Why did you decide, okay, I need to try something different?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I've seen farming and the way everything's evolved, we're kind of becoming drug addicts addicted to a drug that's chemicals, that's fertilizers. And I was always concerned that at some point, once you get hooked on something long enough, the people that are determining the price on this stuff have pretty much got you where they want you. So I was always worried that potentially, eventually, that could become an issue for us, not obviously foreseeing that it was going to happen this quick and probably at the level, like certainly urea's been, or nitrogen's been extremely dear. So that was always a concern to me in the back of my mind. But not only that, and I would have never foreseen what's happening in other countries in the world like Canada and I think it's Holland. I think there's issues where now governments are starting to regulate how much of certain things they're bringing into the country in a bid to meet some global warming target, I guess, as far as emissions go. So, I certainly would have never predicted that side of it, but was always concerned about, one, the costs going to a point where that takes the profitability away from what we're doing. Two, the impact that using those products was having on our soil and therefore then the sustainability of our business and our production, etc. around that. If we're just continuing to degrade our property because we're using too much of this stuff, then at what point do we turn this around, and how do we turn it around, and how hard is it then? The further you get, the lower you get, the longer it's going to take you to get back to where you need to be or should be. So that was always a concern to me, was, when do we start to turn this around? I guess, look, I was preoccupied for the last 20 odd years with the transport business as well. It made it very difficult for me to have enough time here to do the things that we really needed to try and do. But in the last 18 months or so, we've sort of moved away from the transport side and tried to concentrate wholly on the farming. And yeah, it's given us an opportunity to try some things and have a lot of failures, but have a bit of fun along the way too, yeah.
So did you notice that it was starting to become degraded? But was it actually noticeable?
Well, certainly not in production terms. I think we could still grow as good of crops as we had done 20 years ago, but it's just this gradual increasing of inputs.
So you noticed that, that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Because you're not a really extravagant person or farmer with the use of chemicals and synthetics, are you?
No, we try to minimise that. Obviously, I guess as we've seen, you still need to put enough nitrogen on to achieve the crop that you want to grow. But we still regularly do some cultivation, which I'm not sure that's the perfect answer either, but that's, a lot of farmers 30, 40 years ago, that's all they did. Nil-till certainly wasn't a big thing. So we do a bit of both. Not saying that either one's right or wrong, but just to try and minimise our chemical footprint. Certainly into the future, camera sprayers, I think, will become a lot bigger thing, and we're going to go down that path too. So not only about obviously mindful of the cost of chemical and trying to reduce that cost, but more so about trying to actually reduce the usage of chemical and target the weeds rather than the blanket spray like we're doing at the moment. So because obviously that business model doesn't work if chemicals come back to, say, if Roundup comes back to $5 a litre when now it's say 10. If the only way you can afford your camera sprayer is that it's $10 a litre, then at $5 a litre you probably can't justify having it. So we haven't bought it worrying about the price of it so much, but more the impact on our soil is more what, and it's both, but we're looking at probably just trying to reduce that impact of having that chemical there all the time, or as much chemical all the time,
Yeah. Now, through conversation, you did mention that you don't desiccate. So although you do use some chemicals, and I was quite surprised about this because I thought that once farmers had RR seeds, Roundup Ready seeds, that's what they did. It was kind of a standard thing. But you have chosen not to.
Yep.
So what's your reasoning behind that?
Look, I guess a few things. So obviously lots of chickpeas and mung beans. It's pretty standard practice that people spray those things out. Now, from a consumer's point of view, I would tend to think people that eat that are probably a little more conscious of their health and eating those kind of products because they're believing that they're doing the right thing to consume them, and yet they're the things that they're killing with Roundup. So that didn't quite sit real good with me that would happen. But anyway, it's quite, it certainly happens plenty of places. So there was that side of it about the health side of things and for us not wanting to go down that path with those particular crops. But things like sorghum and that are being sprayed out, I guess the issue becomes once you spray that crop out and kill it, that plant then gradually becomes weaker and weaker. So standability of that crop is not great as you go further away from the date of being sprayed. So I guess a lot of people spray out because they, one, they can, so they could spray it out today, in 10 days' time they can start harvesting. Now, if there's a bad rain event coming and you can get that crop off prior to that by spraying out, there's definitely an advantage there. And also they work on the moisture saving, that plant's not pulling out that moisture from the point where it's been sprayed out to when it would have naturally dried and ripened to be able to harvest as a non-sprayed out crop. So yes, you're losing a bit of moisture, but for us it's more about the risk of spraying it out and having it lodge badly, as against, I mean, it's not to say a non-sprayed out crop won't lodge, but it certainly reduces the risk of that by a whole lot. So that was just about risk management for us, really, and not to say that we're getting our risk management right, but it's just how we've done it. And yeah, it doesn't sit well with me to spray crops out like that. Obviously that sorghum, it's fully out and head, the grain's there, the Roundup's going on it as well as the rest of the plant. Then we take it off to a feedlot, feed it to the cattle, eat the meat. Why have we got these issues with cancers and all of these other things going on? Is it from that? I don't know, but yeah, it's not something I feel comfortable doing, put it that way. Yeah.
Now, talking about lodging, I found it quite funny when I was actually filming both the monoculture and the multi-species, and you were having great fun harvesting the multi-species. That wasn't a problem, and then you went and harvested the monoculture. And I was like, yes, but it was yes for different reasons.
And I was going no because you wouldn't drive the header.
So just talk us through what happened there and what you think.
Yeah, so I guess there was a couple of issues that probably happened there. We had a really bad storm probably 6 weeks or so, or 8 weeks before the crop was sort of starting to mature. So we had heads out, but still green, and the plant obviously very green. It really damaged a lot of that monoculture crop. I don't know whether we didn't get as much wind on the opposite end of or on the further down the farm where there was the multi-species one, but it certainly blew a lot of that monoculture crop over pretty bad. It stood up reasonably well again. It wasn't great, but I mean, it did stand up from where it was. I thought it was just about a write-off, but it certainly stood up enough that we could harvest it. But so, yeah, I'm not really sure the full answers on it. It'd be nice to say, well, the multi-species stood up well because of a multi-species scenario, etc. I don't know really whether that was the case or not. We definitely didn't have as big a crop in the multi-species, even though it yielded quite well, considering the number of plants as against the monoculture. I mean, it was definitely less in the multi-species, but the yield wasn't ridiculously low. So yeah, I mean, it was a battle. Like, it was so easy to harvest the multi-species where it was standing up. We could just cut, I don't know what we were harvesting, 1 metre or so above the ground.
It wasn't as tall though, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, exactly. Like, and that was part of the problem with the monoculture. It grew 8 foot tall, and that's never great in a bad year. So ideally, probably the best crops we've ever had of sugar drip have been those sort of 5, 6 foot tall crops, total height to the top of the heads. And this year it's sort of 8 foot. Some I couldn't even reach, so they're probably 9 foot or so. So obviously, when you get a bad storm like we got with hail and that in it, it blew it over quite easily, and then it was a problem to harvest, no doubt. It was a battle, but I mean, we got it there. But yeah, a lot of chokes in the header, just wouldn't feed in properly because you're trying to take a lot more of the plant because you're harvesting a lot lower, and yeah, it was definitely problematic. But we got there in the end, and probably harvested at about half the speed we were in the multi-species. Yeah.
So going to your seed business,
Yep.
How do you see the future? Will you be, actually, no, this is the question. Will you be growing multi-species crops, harvesting the multi-species, and then selling the multi-species? All at the same time? And if that's not possible, why not?
Yeah, good question. And I guess it's not something we've sort of explored yet, but I guess the issues that you have is you've really got to try and get all of those crops to mature pretty close together is the problem. So if you grow, say you're going to grow a summer mix and you've got something like French white millet in that mix that's quite quick, but then it's 2 months on till the last one that you plant in that mix is mature and ready to harvest. The issue you will have is the French white millet will thrash out. You'll end up with a lot of the grain on the ground from that particular one. while you're waiting for the other ones to ripen up. So I guess it's a case of trying to match up as many things in the same maturity time frame as you can. Then the problem becomes, okay, are you going to sell them as a mix?
Yes, that's what I'd like you to do.
The only other issue I see then is you might have to pull that mix apart through the grading system, pull it apart into its individual lines of seed if possible, to actually clean them properly. That's the dilemma you have. Like, if you've got big seeds and little seeds, then it's very difficult to get the trash and the husk and all that sort of stuff out of that, whilst leaving all those things in there. Because if you've got a screen on that's going to keep a cowpea in but let small things out, like cracked cowpeas out, then you're probably going to drop some of your smaller sugar drip out or your millets out or whatever through the screen. So you're going to sort of lose them if you don't keep that and rehandle it later. So
when you're talking about cleaning the seeds, you're talking about getting all the like chaff out and also the weed seeds.
Yep.
So what would happen then if you chose all similar size seeds, all ripening at the same time?
Yeah, that would be more doable, definitely. If they were fairly close in size, then you could obviously go through and run the same size screens to handle, crack, and then obviously get some trash and bigger things out, and also through your length separation and that. So long and short, that would be more achievable if you've got similar size seed. The challenge is how many crops can you get in a multi-species mix that are going to be within, say, a 10-day or a fortnight window of maturity and have that same seed size.
That's what I'd like to know.
Well, when you get the answer, let me know, because I'm not sure.
You're the seed man.
So
I was hoping you'd be like, oh yes.
Yeah, so easy. Yeah, it'd be great if it was. Eh? So that's some of the dilemmas you're going to have trying to do that. Yeah, definitely. But the other option is, like Martin's doing at Ningen, is actually try and sort of separate them out, and then you might have to go in and actually clean each line on its own. If you have to do that, clean it, set the right screens up, clean that particular line, clean the next one after you've separated them all. It depends on how fussy you want to be with the sample. And that's, I guess, people growing this multi-species type scenario understand that what they're trying to achieve is a little bit different to a monoculture cropper that doesn't want to see one weed or one anything. There's a bit of a difference there. So
yeah.
I guess it depends on what those customers will accept, I suppose, as to how far you have to go with it. But yeah, I would see some problems, but no doubt, if it can be done, yeah.
See, for me, what I would like is somebody like you growing a regenerative multi-species that I just have in a bag and then go and sow on my property.
Yep.
So I know that it hasn't been a monoculture. Not that monocultures are really bad if you're doing the whole multi-species or the rotation and things as well. They're not like, it's not the end of the world, I understand that. Yeah. But to know that it's regeneratively grown, because of course the seeds when they're a multi-species and they're grown together are way better than a monoculture.
That's right, yeah.
And they've already formed a relationship and a bond and the microbiome.
And look, over time, I'm sure there will be a whole lot more work done in that area, and people will try things that other people would say you're crazy for doing that, and it might work. So it's going to be a time thing where over the years people try more things, and we'll soon work out what doesn't work, hopefully. And the problem is every year is different. So what works this year doesn't work next year. That's the big dilemma. So yeah, I mean, certainly as more people get into this kind of farming system, assuming it works, and I mean, I'm not saying that we're definitely going to be set on that path. I'd like to be, if that's how it's going, if it will work, but we have to dip our toe in the water, go gently. We're not going to crash our whole business over trying to, be the first ones to grow 1,000 acres of multi-species and see it all fail. So we're just going to keep going steady, see how it works out, and
So you're liking what you're seeing?
Yeah, yep. I mean, this year's been really difficult. So last year in the multi-species winter crop, there was no doubt in my mind that two things were really obvious. One, we saw a beautiful aggregation of our soil when the moisture was at a certain stage in our soil that I've never seen here in a multi-species crop. So at certain times in the moisture profile, you could just go in and dig out this beautifully aggregated soil. It was soft, it was easy to dig in, it was amazing. And then you could go up the paddock further to the wheat, and it was like, yeah, well, take your chippo or your shovel or something and put a fair bit of effort in to achieve the same thing. So there was a very clear difference there for me visually with that. The other thing that blew me a bit was when we had the trials over here last year with some S&W seed, and we had the multi-species mix in there, and I threw the garden hose out in there and watered that patch for about 3 or 4 days to give us a decent area to soak it up, to see if there was any visual change in what was watered as against what wasn't. Now, bear in mind, the rain pretty much stopped here the middle of July last year. So by middle of August, we could definitely see our monoculture wheat starting to stress for moisture. September didn't get any better. Pretty much right through to the end, it was pretty tough going for the winter crop. So, but in that multi-species, it was very difficult to pick that line where the water had been and the water hadn't been. Now, my question is, as a monoculture cropper, are we getting the best water use efficiency out of our crops by being monoculture as against a multi-species from seeing what I saw there? Because I defy anyone to walk into that, and you went and had a look at that with me, to actually draw, like if that was a monoculture crop of wheat, you would very clearly see the line where that wheat was kicking along better, I believe, compared to where that water didn't get to. Yeah. And out there, I couldn't pick it from a distance. And there was a few people went in there. I said to one bloke, go in there and tell me where that line is. And the only way he could tell it was when he got into the mud. He was walking in through, going, can't pick it, can't pick it. Yeah, I can pick it, all right, I'm in the mud. So that's my question is monoculture cropping giving us the best water use efficiency out of our crops? I don't know, but it's something I'm keen to check out as we go along.
And so with that question, bare fallow, what would you say about that then?
Australia's a problem to farm in, because what we've been used to for the last however many years has been, if you don't fallow through long enough, you just don't get enough soil moisture to continue to grow your crops, like 17, 18, 19. I mean, you know, totally different to now, where we've done, you know, a winter crop straight back into a summer crop, straight back into a winter crop in multi-species. Couldn't have done that 17, 18, 19, wouldn't have had a hope. So that's our problem. So I guess we've all been guilty of long fallows because we've had to build our moisture profile through that period to actually be able to grow a crop. So to go and put a cover crop, multi-species, whatever, in fallow, so that what would normally be fallow, so that we haven't got bare soil, it's a case of changing the psyche, because we all go, well, hang on, we're bare fallowing this to save the moisture, but in actual fact, maybe we are better off to cover it with a multi-species.
Your bare fallow though would be covered in weeds, or is it?
No, try and keep it pretty bare. Yeah.
Okay,
yep.
So in your bare fallow, how long do you bare fallow for?
Normally, I suppose 18-month rotation. So what was sort of planted so a sorghum crop planted, say September, October, harvested, say February, March, April, would then rotate through to the next winter crop. So I guess you've got nothing from April till June. So you've virtually got 12 months there of no crop growing in that, if you were going to swing out of a summer rotation into a winter one. And then winter, obviously, it would be, like to end up in a summer rotation, would be sort of planted in May, June, harvested in November, and then not planted till the following September. So you're looking, 9 months to 12 months with no crop growing in that soil.
But are you allowing the weeds to grow?
No, not normally.
So how often would you have to spray?
And that depends on the season. I guess a wetter season more often. You could be doing in the wrong year. I suppose you could be doing a blanket spray every 6 weeks, I suppose.
Because you see where I'm going here, that your weeds are actually the multi-species.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
And so if you just left them, you're still bare fallow, but
you've got something, and you've got a living root in that soil, and that's why we've done what we've done with this multi-species paddock. Is, I guess going back, we would have always thought, well, hang on, we're flogging our country, because we've just gone crop. In 3 seasons, we've had 3 crops, which is, triple cropping, not double cropping, it's triple cropping, isn't it? And that normally is not what you would do. So I guess what we've done there is a bit extreme, but the problem to leave weeds in your paddock for us to try and grow something as seed, we need to be very careful. If you're going to let the weeds go, you still need to kill them out before they're seed, basically. So yes, you can probably leave them go a little bit longer, but then like through the summer months, you know, it doesn't take long for a plant to get to seed point.
Yeah.
When it's hot, 40 degrees, and there's moisture there, and they're humming along pretty good. So from the point where you might have done a spray, you might only be able to leave that another week or so, and you'd have to do it anyway, otherwise things would be flowering. And you know, some of the bigger ones that were out of the ground earlier compared to the littler ones that you're...
So with your multi-species then, my next question is, how many weeds have been growing in there?
Yeah, it's surprising, not as many as I probably would have thought. Yeah, definitely. It's. I'm not saying there's none, but it's certainly, alarm bells aren't ringing, put it that way. So, and that surprised me even after when we crimped that first winter crop, and then there was nothing in there for 8 weeks probably, other than the straw cover that we'd crimped down, and certainly it got away pretty quick after we put the biology on it. It didn't hang around as long as I would have liked it to. So, you know, the weed pressure certainly wasn't as bad as I would have said in our other paddocks, and I don't believe that's particularly a cleaner, you know, like it's not like it's a beautiful clean paddock anyway, history-wise. So I don't think we had a whole lot going on there in our benefit. So there's no doubt there's something has changed.
Interesting, isn't it? Because I reckon Mother Nature's going, look, this is bare, stick some multi-species on here, weeds, which is what we call, but you'd already put your multi-species out, so she went, oh, well...
My job's done. Yeah, I'll
save those
I'll
seeds.
sit back on the couch for a while and watch this fella stuff it up again. But yeah, that's it. I mean, and I suppose that, and look, I mean, there's plenty of people have done it for a lot longer than we have, and are probably, you know, definitely way more experienced than we are, and have seen clearer results. There's not a lot of people around here doing it. There's some, but I guess every area is different, and the way things behave is slightly different. So, yeah, I'm just keen to give it a go, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, well, I don't know. Go back to where we were, I suppose. But yeah, I don't particularly want to do that.
No, I don't think you will need to. There's always questions, and there's always answers to those questions. And when you say that you fail, they're just opportunities.
Yeah, yeah.
And you may not have thought of the answer, but yeah.
And look, seasons are what they are. Yeah. You know, what works this year doesn't work next year, and that totally changes. Yeah, and not only seasonal things, but timing. Yeah. Like 2 weeks, 3 weeks can totally change the end result.
Yeah.
Totally.
And that's what Martin says as well. If you just don't get in that little window of opportunity, you can be completely stuck.
Yep. Well, I remember 2 years ago we were planting the first week of September, summer crop, and one of our neighbours reckoned he was a bit too dry to go, so he didn't, and he planted probably a month or 6 weeks later. His yield was double ours.
Wow. And
it's just on timing. The rain came, he was laughing. Yep, and our crop had finished. By the time that decent rain came that we needed, our crop was finished. His was, you know, just ready to take it all in. So yeah, definitely timing is a big thing. But no one's willing to fill out the rainfall chart for me for the next 12 months, so I've got no idea about that either.
No, the weather is just mad.
Yeah.
It's just all over the place.
Yeah, it is. So you just do the best you can with what you got on.
Yeah.
And like this year, I mean, who knows? They're talking, we could probably be planting in the next few weeks once the soil temperature comes up enough, so we could put sorghum in soon. But they're talking rain, or we just had 30 mil of rain here and water everywhere again. They're talking rain end of the week again, like Thursday, Friday. They're talking rain again in 10 days after that. Who knows when the summer crop will go in.
I think maybe you just kind of make that one a bit redundant then, because that's going to go under again, isn't it?
This multi-species, well, I hope not, but anyway, look, can't change it, eh? If it happens, it happens.
Just move over a bit.
Yeah, just head west a bit. Go west, young man.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. That's been a great In the Back of the Ute special.
Thank you.
Russell Young. And what can you do? Get your umbrella out.
Yeah.
Get your gumboots on.
Yep. And stop rain dancing Thamesing.
Yes. Okay.
All good.
36 minutes, you can talk.
Oh, wow. And shut up.
And I was thinking, Tamsin, your questions, because I'm going to be asking you similar questions, but it will be a bit more in depth with what we've actually done.
Yep, with the
what we've done, what you've done.
With the multi-species.
So yeah, so now we've got to go through the video if your brain's okay with that.
What did we do?
I can't remember.